How to do library research from Ithaca College website to Google Scholar. In this video, you'll learn about the importance of reading the prompt, how to Google Ithaca College Library to find the library website, how to experiment with keywords from the prompt, how to use library filters, read the abstract and keywords of the scholarly articles that you find, download and cite sources, how to use Google Scholar, how to use the interlibrary loan if you can't find a source on Google Scholar or in the library website, and then also to contact a librarian if you need additional help, as well as the Writing Center. So the very first thing that you need to do to start this research is to actually read the prompt. And so you want to read the overview, talking about what we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. And there are three options here. There's the focus on linguistic justice, in those that want to learn more about the social injustice that is imposed upon multilingual speakers in public education or in college. And so there on this section are keywords that you can be using. And so I have highlighted here words like linguistic justice, social justice, linguistic diversity, white language supremacy. Some of you might be interested more in a particular social injustice in your own discourse community or in a particular group that you're a part of, or maybe part of your discipline or major. And so students in the past have looked at, for instance, colorism in Broadway or lack of female leadership in Aikido organizations. This is not a list for you to choose from. This is a list of what students have researched in the past. So this is what they developed on their own. And so some keywords that you might use are words like genre analysis, discourse analysis, as part of doing this research, because you will be looking at different genres that describe that problem. And the last is an autoethnography. So this is more about sort of your experience within a particular discipline, major, or community, or particular group that you're a part of. And so then you're going to be talking about basically the translation of how members of your community speak and what that means in other contexts. So you're basically going to be like translating for us what some of these symbols or concepts and so forth mean in your discipline. And keywords might include discourse analysis, linguistic analysis. Okay, so you want to start with that. A prompt often helps you with the keywords. The next step is to actually Google Ithaca College Library. And once you find the home page, you'll want to bookmark this page because you're going to be using it a lot for the next 4 years. Okay, so I'm here on the home page and I'm just going to try some keywords. So I'm going to try discourse analysis and then dance and equity. Okay, so I hit the search and right away I find a few sources that pop up. Now, before I start actually going and skimming through this list, I want to first take a look at my filters. Now, we have here sources from 1980, and I'm going to narrow this for the last 20 years, basically, so since 2000. Right, so a lot of the research on cultural rhetorics came out of the 90s and early 2000s. So I'm aware of that because I'm part of this scholarly academic community. So you might not be aware exactly like how far back you should go. In general, if it's a topic in the humanities, then looking back in the last 20 years should be fine. Of course, if it was a topic like Shakespeare, going back even to the 50s might be fine. But for this particular topic, I'm going to take it back to the last 20 years, and I want to make sure that it's peer-reviewed, because as a requirement for this project, you need a minimum of 3 peer-reviewed journal articles. And so my list is narrowed down to 411. And so now I can start looking at the titles to find something that I feel might be relevant to my research. So I'm just skimming titles and then I find something here on hip hop. And so let's imagine that I wanted to focus on hip hop education, which is not uncommon in high school, in elementary, in college as well. So if I want the source, I click available online. So that's a key. That means the library does have this article. And then at this point, I may want to look at some of these keywords here. So these are some of the topics or themes that might be brought up. And then I also have the actual abstract of the article. So before actually retrieving it, I can get a sense of what are the different topics that this article addresses, whether I believe it might be relevant or not. It mentions pre-adolescence, and maybe I only wanted to focus on college students. So then I would exclude this source because it's going to focus on pre-adolescence. However, maybe I am focusing on elementary education and hip-hop education. So this could be appropriate if that was my focus. So I want the text, so I have to click on this part here, full text availability. Once I have read the title and I've read the abstract, and I looked at any keywords or topics associated with this particular source, then I'm ready to actually download the source. So what I want to do is click on the PDF link. Most articles on the library website will provide you with a PDF link, so you want to look for that. If a source did not provide a PDF link and only provided an HTML page, so in other words, a web page, and you found this in the library, so then you'll have to actually save it as a PDF. So to do that, you go either Control P if you are on a Windows machine, or you go Command P if you are on a Mac. So I click on that, and then I have the option to save it as a PDF, and then I click the Save button, and it will be downloaded onto your device. With this particular source, to download it, I look for the arrow, and then click on that, and then make sure it's properly named and titled, and then download it on the device. So once you find a relevant source to start reading, you actually want to do is to start skimming. You actually don't want to read the whole thing just yet because it still might not be relevant. So in this particular article, it's an article from the humanities, so there are actual titles or headings, so you want to kind of skim through that to get a sense of what the article is going to be about, and look for an introduction that gives an overview of the topic. Also, you want to look for something like a discussion section. So this is perfect. This one has a discussion section. So the discussion section is basically an overview of the whole article. And so you would definitely want to start reading. After reading the abstract and the introduction, you can skip down to this section, just read this. Afterwards, if you feel like this is relevant, then for certain you know you have the right article for you. And this one also has a conclusion, which is quite helpful. So that's the most important section of a research or scholarly article, is the discussion section. In some articles, they may label it just as findings. And so in this particular article, for example, the author did not include a discussion section, but they have the findings. And there are also, again, subtitles and headings there to help you read through the article. So in the beginning, we want to actually skim the article. And then once we know that, in fact, we are going to use this, then you can read it carefully from top to bottom. And this is when that technique of says does come in handy. This is where you can read it from paragraph to paragraph and then make a note on your PDF and comment on what is it saying and what is it trying to accomplish, and do the next for the next paragraph, and so on and so on. This particular article does have headings, and so you can actually talk about what each of the sections is saying and what is it trying to do, what is it trying to accomplish. Okay, so this is how you take detailed notes when reading scholarly articles. When conducting research in the library website, one thing you definitely do not want to do is actually bookmark the page instead of downloading it as a PDF. That's a real big mistake, because after a few weeks, the library will break those links. So then you're just going to be redirected to the general homepage of the library website. And so every single year I have students who forget this, and every single year I have at least one student who has to start their research all over. So please do not be that student. One other feature that the library website does have is the ability to cite. So when you come to a page, always look for the cite button. Every database will look different, but it will produce for you your actual citation. So you want the latest MLA 9th. If you write an APA in your discipline, then you would select the APA 7th, and it will just create it for you. And then you can just copy it, and then you want to paste it into a Google Doc or a Word file. If you happen to find a source that was published within the last 5 years, then what you can do to find other sources, and especially if this source is perfect for your research, you felt like you hit the lottery and you don't have to do any more research practically because you feel like you found what you were looking for, then more than likely that author cited other really great sources. So if something's been published in the last 5 years, then they have very recent sources. So you want to come down to the references page, and then you can start looking at the titles and seeing if there's something that's relevant. If you know shortcuts, you can go Command F or Control F and then search through that PDF for like keywords, especially if you were like studying college students or something, and you can just type in college student, right? And then that will appear and you'll be able to focus on the sources that address that. So let's say I want this particular source that was published in 2000, Black Feminist Thought, Knowledge Consciousness, and the Politics of Empowerment. So I can go Command C or Control C. I can paste the article title into Google Scholar, and then the source will be made available to me. So this is a shortcut to find sources. You can also do the same where you copy and paste that title into the library website, placing quotation marks around it. So let's give that a try. So Command C, I paste that title, and I'm able to find the book right away, and it's available online. If you were not able to find the source either on Google Scholar or in the library homepage, so you pasted the title and it's not there, you can retrieve the source through interlibrary loan. So you want to click on this link, Beyond the IC Library. So you click on that, and then it says not finding the title you're looking for, so you can click on that, and then automatically this page is generated. If it's an article, you click article. If it's a book, you click book, and you just fill out red asterisk. So this one only requires one thing to fill out. This one requires 2 things to fill out. If you are in the library website and you are using keywords, so in here I have rhetorical analysis, music education, and equity, and only finding 5 results, and you're not happy with what you're finding, you can click on Google Scholar over here on the right, and then it will then search for those terms in Google Scholar, and I get 139 results. So that's really promising, but that means that only 5 will be available to you, and the other 134 will probably not be available to you. So then you will need to use interlibrary loan in order to track that source down. So now let's talk about how to use Google Scholar. Let's talk about what Google Scholar can do for you. First, this is a resource used by professors, researchers, and graduate students. The research you'll find is written for experts. However, as undergraduate students in some departments, you'll be expected to use Google Scholar and read scholarly articles. So I'll provide you a quick introduction to how to use Google Scholar. First off, you'll notice right away that you can download some of the PDFs. If you scroll down, for instance, you'll see View at IC Library. By clicking on that, you will be able to download the PDF from there. If you notice, this article here doesn't have a PDF or IC Library, so that means you won't be able to access it. But however, what you can do instead is you can actually just copy the title of this article. You go to the home page of the library website, paste the title there, search for it, and once again, you can locate it by going beyond the IC Library and then filling out the form that you need in order to download that particular article, and then just paste the title there. Google Scholar also is linked to Google Books. So here is a book by Baker Bell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this source and right click it to open it up as a new tab. Now, the reason why I'm going to open up anything that I'm interested in as a new tab is that I don't want to lose this original list of all the sources that came up, because I still am going to work through this list to see if there's anything good. Each time I want to check out a source to see if it's relevant, I'm just going to open it up by right-clicking on the link and then open it up as a new tab. So I just quickly go through and I will right-click on all of these. And then once I've opened up several tabs, and then I can just sort of work through these sources to see which one is relevant. Again, looking at the abstract and the title and skimming it at first. So this one here is an actual Google book. And the thing about Google Books is sometimes, if you're lucky, they will give you an entire chapter and you're able to then use that as a source because you're going to reference that entire chapter. Anytime you've been denied pages from a chapter you want, then that means you're going to need to request it through the library. So you can't cite a source if it's missing pages from a chapter that you want. Again, you can't cite a source if you want a particular chapter and there are pages missing. Okay, you will have to request that whole book from our library. And if the whole chapter is available to you, so you get the introduction, for instance, then you're lucky, and then you can actually count that as a source. But again, the whole chapter has to be included. Another feature of Google Scholar, which is to your advantage, is you can come here to the cited by number. This one is cited by 238. So that number is a high number. It's only 2020, so that means already a lot of people are liking this book. If you come here, this one was cited by 37, and then it's been in circulation for 12 years. This is 2010. So it doesn't mean that the book is bad, but if I'm going to pick between two authors, I definitely want to make sure that I'm picking the more famous person because they will have more credibility. However, this source here just might be exactly what you're researching. So 37 isn't necessarily bad. And let's say you wanted to research on immigrants and you're like, okay, it's only been cited by one, but it was just published, so it hasn't been around long enough. So that isn't so bad, especially if it was something exactly about what you were going to research. So we look at these numbers as sort of a guide in terms of like how much of an authority they are. Here's another one, 113. I'm like, okay, it's been around for 15 years. And so, this person is not as famous as this person here, Baker Bale, who just published something 2 years ago. So then what I can do here is I can right click and open this up as a new tab. And then within here, I'm going to click search within citing articles. So this is really important. You got to make sure you click that box. And then I can just type in like a word like college, and it's going to look through that 235 and narrow it down to 187. And then I can look and see all the instances where the word college might appear in the title or even in the abstract. So this is where now I can narrow it down. I'm looking through 235 people who cited this famous book. So let me go back here. This was a famous book here by 238 people, and I'm going to see if I can get access to this book, but I can find more sources through this list of 238. And so now I click this box and I'm going to search within that. So let's say it was specifically on music that I was researching, and it narrows it to 59. So again, everyone is citing that famous person. And so then they all sort of keep good company, and then I can now vet this new list. Again, this list of 238. So this is a trick of Google Scholar to help you find good, strong, relevant, credible sources. And so we can see here, we can eradicating anti-Black racism in new schools. And so I'm focusing on music, hip hop here. So they're like, oh, hip hop keeps coming up, so maybe I can just change this to hip hop. And again, playing around. And don't forget, you got to check off that box. As a requirement for your annotated bibliography, you will need 3 peer-reviewed scholarly articles from the library website or Google Scholar, but you are free to find 3 additional sources. And so if you are looking for an actual news article, Google Interactive Media Bias Chart. Okay, so Google this, and then you will see here a chart of which sources you can trust. So if you want to look for something that's more middle or balanced in terms of bias, and here these are more reliable, so you want to find sources that are basically closer to the center line and above the equator here, basically. So you have things like NPR, PBS, CNN, NBC. The more left you go, the more liberal it will be. So like Mother Jones being quite leftist. And then we see here on the far right, below this line, so it's less reliable. So they're more likely to have misinformation. So you have Fox News, you'll have the Megyn Kelly show, The Blaze, and so forth. So these are sources you would want to avoid. Okay, so if you're going to use news articles, you double check your source on this media bias chart to see what you can trust. In addition to using news articles, you are open to use TED Talks. If you're going to use videos from YouTube, make sure you locate sources from actual professors or experts in a particular field. They often have videos in YouTube. Be careful about not using like infomercials or anything like that, so someone trying to sell you something. Although the library website can provide the citation for your scholarly sources, as for your other sources like YouTube videos or news articles or web articles, you will need to go to Purdue OWL and use their citation guide. So if I'm using MLA, for instance, I click on that, and then here you can look up particular sources. And so I want to go to Formatting and Style Guide. So if I need to cite a periodical, so that's an actual journal article, I come to this page. Electronic sources are like web articles or websites, blog articles. You want to use that. And so do not use the actual citation generator here. This is a third-party source. This is not part of Purdue OWL. You need to use the actual citation guide. So it's your responsibility to make sure that your citations are correct by using Purdue OWL. This will be 20% of the grade of your annotated bibliography. So you want to make sure that you double check all of your citations to make sure they're correct. At the very beginning of the research process, it is very common for students to change their topic, so you're definitely open to do that. I highly encourage you to go to the library or chat with a librarian online so you can get feedback and help finding sources. It's not easy finding sources. It can take about an hour a source to find your sources. So you need to find a total of 6. So expect to spend like 6 hours just finding your sources and making sure you have relevant sources. After the first 3 or 4 weeks of working on this project, at that point, it's pretty much the point of no return. So the topic that you've selected is the topic that you need to focus on, because it's just too much work later in the semester to actually start all over. So you definitely want to make sure that you're interested in your topic, and you can most definitely find sources on any of these topics. Students will be writing an actual annotated bibliography, and so this is the rubric for the annotated bibliography. I have posted here guidelines in MLA, because most students have to write MLA, but if you write in APA or Chicago, then that will be fine, but you'll have to follow all the guidelines and rules for APA or Chicago. Your annotated bibliography will have a total of 2 paragraphs, so you'll have a citation, and then you'll have a paragraph summarizing the source in your own words, and then you will have a paragraph that analyzes it. In terms of assessment, the summary will count for 30%, the reflection analysis 30%, citations 20%, and the relevance of the source is 20% as well. Okay, just to review, don't forget you need to read the prompt. You want to make sure you bookmark the Ithaca College Library website. Make sure to experiment with different keywords to see what comes up on your list. Don't forget to use those library filters and narrow it down to the last 20 years if you are doing something in the humanities, as well as make sure you select peer-reviewed articles. Make sure you read abstracts and keywords first before committing yourself to a source. Don't forget to download the PDF of that source and look for the Cite button so you can copy and paste the citation. If you want to use Google Scholar, keep in mind it is more advanced, but there are more options available to find sources. If you cannot find a source, you can use interlibrary loan within the library. Don't forget, just copy and paste the title of that article and then click on the links to retrieve it. If you plan to use any web articles or news articles, don't forget to use the media bias chart online. And last, if you need additional help finding sources, contact the library or schedule an appointment with the Writing Center. You're now ready to complete the research quiz. So in Canvas, you can access the link to the quiz. So before starting your own research online, you must first watch this entire video lesson, and then you can complete the quiz. And then also don't forget to complete your research proposal assignment, which we completed in class.